Hi everybody at the Summit Lighthouse. Namaste, it's Ben, aka Brother Eli. I answer to either one. My actual my name, everybody knows me as Ben and calls me Benjamin. I was born with that name, but I changed my name in the court system in 2004 to Eli. So I answer to either one. I changed my last name too. I wanted to show this to you because I found the prayer to which I referred several days ago. Um, the um, the church utilizes this prayer in a slightly different format, depending upon the master associated with it and the etheric retreat associated with the prayer. Um, and it's a bedtime prayer. They can be taught to children, used by children. And it's kind of like what we used to call the Lord's Prayer when I was growing up Roman Catholic. But I'll give this to you. But it's actually a modification. Well, it sounds you'll hear the cadence of it resemble the Lord's Prayer. But I want to put it here so we can use it. A lot of these videos, when they're not entirely clear to you or they seem out of context, are intended in part as study guides for me in the future. I look at what are known as pearls of wisdom, for starters. I read, and they're like Zen master teachings. I've explained that elsewhere. But I also find pearls, if you will, or treasure teachings within, canonical religious literature that I know is relevant to what we do at CUT and Summit. But let me tell you. Let me recite this for you. In the name of the Christ, my own real self, I call to the heart of the I Am Presence and to the angel of the presence to take me in my soul and in my soul consciousness to the retreat of El Moria in Darjeeling. I ask that my four lower bodies be charged and recharged with the will of God, and I ask for my life's blueprint for my fulfillment of that will, and I ask that all information necessary to the fulfillment of my divine plan be released to my outer waking consciousness as it is required. I thank thee and I accept this done in the full power of the risen Christ. So, a person exterior to church commented one day asking me how long I had been affiliated with CUT and so on. She said, you all sound alike. She's like, yeah, when you're talking about, when you talk about your involvement, you sound like the other people in your church. And what she meant was something that I discovered shortly thereafter, was that it's not that our system is so codified that it really does, like when even in the prayers, you start to see patterns, or you hear them and you learn them and then you remember them. As they teach in Hinduism, Dharma is really threefold. It's what you, I think they say it's what you read, hear, what is recounted in story form, what is verbally said in a sangha, and what is remembered. So it's a little bit, and I like that because there is a similarity among chelas and how they express themselves. And if you listen, it's not as if anybody sat down and said you have to make your religious presentation in this format. But we all have been following the same gurus for so long that it does become codified naturally, which is great. I know someone, we really are like a unified church. Someone made the comment they didn't really know much about Summit, and they said, so it's an international organization. I said, well, yes, and if you look on the Summit website, like the splash page, it will say that. But the truth is, it's nuts and bolts, in some respects, old time, rockin' Christian, part Christian faith. It resembles, in a way, some of the Bible Belt churches that are I think the more ardent churches. It's not an organization like a political organization. It's definitely a religion. I just want to make that clear to people because I think that will be, although I think people resist religion, I think also people periodically say that they resist religion, but they really want the comfort and the heart behind belonging to a church or being affiliated with a church or even knowing about a church. And we really are a church. We're not a political organization. We're um, a church, although we are politically powerful. That's important to understand, and knowledgeable, savvy. Let me read this to you again. See if I can get the cadence right now that I can see a little bit more clearly. In the name of the Christ, my own real self, I call to the heart of the I Am Presence and to the angel of the presence to take me in my soul and in my soul consciousness to the retreat of El Moria in Darjeeling. I ask that my four lower bodies be charged and recharged with the will of God, and I ask for my life's blueprint for my fulfillment of that will, and I ask that all information necessary to the fulfillment of my divine plan be released to my outer waking consciousness as it is required. I thank thee and I accept this done in the full power of the risen Christ. So that's a great prayer when working with El Moria and Darjeeling on the first. The first ray, the blue ray. I owe a couple of questions from last time. I didn't like how my handwriting looked on the forum when I started writing things down, but I remember a couple off the top of my head. And one of them, someone was asking me about the mind-born sons of Brahma, and I want to go there right now. One thing that I'd like to do is to encourage people to donate, if I can take up your time for just a little bit. First of all, I don't know how to work money, I suppose. I mean, I do. I'm responsible, and I do well with what extremely little that I have, or I manage not well, to be frank. But I mean, I do. I'm not irresponsible with money. It's that I'm trying to use Tithely as leverage for raising funding, and I think that it has to do with orienting my brain properly to picture all of the numbers, and I don't know how to do that, or I can't. I don't have the tools to do that from here, evidently. But if anybody wants to give, boy, or a loan, like a loan to start the local parish, that would be amazing. Help with that. I really can't interact or network for that from here, unfortunately. I can't be expected to do that. But I do have Tithely online, and I encourage people to give. And what I want to do is, in reward, in exchange for just getting $1 or $2 a month from people, is to include people in a newsletter, a special newsletter that I want to write. I won't turn you away if you can't afford to pay, but I'm trying to get this arrangement to help me keep my head above water financially, personally, which it doesn't quite do yet, which is why I started Tithely. I'll provide you a link to the Tithely below this. Please, pass it around to your friends, hold on to that link, and then donate. There's an option in it. I set it up so that it's called Order of Truth, first of all. I will write down a précis or a synopsis of my order and my mission. It's an order, a holy order that I privately resurrected. I found it, and it was one that used to be in existence. And doing it this way gives me the freedom to state my own religious views while still affiliating fully with the church, but enjoying independence from it's not independence from ranch authority, because it really is it's all an emanation from the same heart. But it is just a lot easier for me to fundraise separately from the ranch as opposed to going to the ranch and asking for money. If we can try to get into the habit of remembering me at tax time, that would be amazing to me. Absolutely amazing to me. And the rewards will be incremental and something that you will see as well, financially and otherwise. I do believe that. But I think that the trick is to get people to come here, enough people to come here, live here, also to Montana, to the extent that that's needed up there, of course. But I'd like to support both efforts, but including having ardent people who are studying as I am, live together in a community so that we have access to the same resources, can travel together where warranted. I think a lot of people might consider it to be a seasonal jaunt, which I can't blame you, although Maine has lovely winters, I suppose, depending upon your individual preference for this, for that sort of thing. So you have the prayer, and my comment about my earlier comments. Oh, and my note about Tithely, which is something that I'm happy to be affiliated with because they cater. It's not like GoFundMe. You have to be approved to use it. So I was approved as a church for fundraising purposes and for tax purposes, which is amazing to me. Right, and so it says order of truth at the top, and then I set it up so that you can give just $1 one time. You can give $500 recurring gifts if you want to do once a month. You know, whatever it is. Everything that you give will support the acquisition of the religious facility up here, and the establishment of well, you know, a central office that would be able to do things like help people obtain mortgages and, you know, get everybody up here, you know, operating together, living together, enjoying life together. That's my goal. Okay. Yeah, and I'll write it down if people, because I know that everybody trusts me. Like I came up through the system too, and for people that, like, hugely impacted, if I may use that word incorrectly, by the work of Mark and Elizabeth Clare Prophet, in a positive sense, of course. That's how I always mean it. It's time to integrate, and it's time to be together. So I just want to plug my Tithely and get things. And if you want to sit down too and talk about fundraising in person, I will fly out to wherever you want me to go, and we can talk about doing it all at once as opposed to my taking small monthly donations. But I like the notion of taking small monthly donations because I'd like to be able to see a roster of the people who are following my work. That's really why I want to do it. I want to be able to go through on a monthly basis and see, oh, you know, John and Sally Smith gave $20 last month, or $1, or that guy I talked to gave me $1 after I, you know, or $1 a month, or whatever he can afford. So yeah, I think that it will help move everything in the right direction. Mindboard Sons of Brahma. Let me preface. I wanna tell you my theological approach to doing all of this with being up here in Maine. There are a couple Catholic churches in Maine that I grew up looking at all of the time and attending all of the time. My grandmother was baptized in one of them. She was a very Roman Catholic woman who was a second generation immigrant. I don't think she was trying to think if she was born here. I know her parents were born in Canada. I'm not sure if she's second or first, or if she was born in Canada and came down. I think that she was born here. I'd have to look it up. In any event, they're Roman Catholic French Canadian. They're from an area of Canada called Acadia. And they had a big impact culturally when they settled here. A lot of the people in this area have French last names to this day. Up until a couple of years ago, they had French masses still. I think they might have eliminated them, unfortunately, because it signals a shift in the era, and I don't always agree when cultures begin to vanish. However natural it may seem, it's important, I think, periodically that certain traditions are preserved. But they used to in Lewiston, and I think a couple other towns, they'd have French Mass, and I'm not sure if they have French Mass anymore at all. I mean, but in any event, so these two churches need revitalization, and there have been enough problems associated with those churches that it's time for there to be a new course and heading. So I pray for that, and I pray to be involved in rectifying that. And I have huge ideas. I think the one in Augusta, I think should be repurposed as a shrine to Fatima, effectively. The second one, and Beloved Mary, and I speak of St. Mary's when I do that. And that's an interesting building. And actually, on the outside of the church, it looks like it's a replica of an extant cathedral either in Germany or France. I'll find that information to you. It's somewhat interesting. It's a small church, but when you look at it, but it kind of looks like a cathedral. But there's something about it that it's almost as if when you stand in front of it, you feel like you're standing further back than you actually are, because it's a replica. It's not full size, although it purports to be a full size cathedral. So there's a really interesting trompe-l'oeil, if that's what it's called. I think trompe-l'oeil. I'm not sure if trompe-l'oeil is just the design or if it's a. I think I might mean visual effect. It's an optical illusion. Um, so let's see here. Oh, and then that's Saint Mary. So Beloved Mary, right? Big deal. As a side note, and I'll share this information, you might remember Samantha Smith, news reports about Samantha Smith from Maine, a girl from Maine, a schoolgirl from Maine, 2 towns over or 3 towns over from where I went to school, in elementary school. She's the one who wrote to Yuri Andropov, I think it was, Prime Minister of Russia at the time, the Soviet Union at the time, during the Reagan 80s, and said, when everybody thought we were going to be nuking each other to death, said, why does this happen? He wrote back and invited her over. Do you remember it was this big international horse and pony show where she went over and everybody, and I think it's great that she did it, but she ended up dying in a plane crash after being on a television show briefly with Robert Wagner, TV actor from Heart to Heart. This is not news, and I'm not disclosing anything for the first time. She was killed in a plane crash with one of the actors. She was cast shortly after appearing on the Today Show in an interview about the Gorbachev or Andropov meeting, and they cast her in a TV show called Lime Street, which was set in England. So I remember very distinctly because she was younger than, she didn't really have a driver's license. I think she was only 14 when they were shooting it, or 15, and that she didn't have a driver's license, but she was on a set driving a car for a little while. That was one of the shots, and I remember it being like an issue that she actually didn't have a license to drive. But the funeral, her funeral, Samantha Smith's funeral, was held at St. Mary's. And that left a big impression on me as well. But I think, and it was nationally televised from Augusta, Maine, rinky-dink Augusta, Maine, nationally televised on all the major networks in the middle of the day, and a really supremely big deal. But yeah, she died at the Augusta airport. That's where the plane went down. So historical, but also important from the standpoint of, I feel, it providing a nexus to this new information that I am receiving about Fatima. And I can provide you a link to that video in which I discuss Fatima as well. And there are a couple other churches too. I won't talk about the Gardner Church right now, but well, I will say that it would be nice to have a church called St. Joseph that is an representative of our faith in Germain, Saint Germain. They're not teaching that there. St. Joseph was Saint Germain according to our faith. So let's have a St. Joseph Catholic Church because they owe so much money and they're in such debt. Let's have a St. Joseph Catholic Church that is properly, well, I don't want to say properly because I don't think everybody needs to believe that St. Joseph was Germain, but let's bring Merlin back to where he ought to be, which is affiliated with this church in Gardner. And I think it would inspire interest, help people to organize prayer and study groups that I think would be effective in to which people could actually commit to learning, like they do at the ranch and used to do at the ranch in the back in the day. So that's what I'm doing here. But also just to be charitable, if you don't want to support all of that, yeah, it's one guy, me, so with no funding at all exterior to donations, which I don't really receive. If you look at my Facebook account, I only have 244 subscribers on YouTube. Every single one of those subscribers is important to me, and I'm glad that it's a smaller group. But if I could teach more widely, just a bit more widely, I'd like to be able to generate the financing in order to be able to live a respectable life, go out, pay a lawyer to get my driver's license back, all of these things that have to happen. And I feel that growth really does have to emanate from this effort. And I don't think that it diminishes anybody to participate in it or to try to contribute to it. I don't, nothing that I do would be chartered that way, if that makes sense. So I encourage you to give if you can. Get on the list, and as I said, I'm impressed with $1 a month, or just $1, or whatever it takes to get on the newsletter distribution. I looked at it the other day. I think you can't give under. I don't think it's a $5 limit. I think it's a $1. I don't think you can give 50 cents. You have to give at least $1. It won't let you give like a 50-cent donation, unfortunately. Okay, so right, developing this for the churches, for 2 or 3 churches in Maine. There's a St. Augustine, St. Mary, and I think St. Joseph, which are all in the area. I don't want to ban Catholicism at all either, but they're way late in dealing with their garbage, and I'm sick of it personally. I've seen too many injuries, people's lives destroyed by careless behavior, reckless behavior, where nobody has sued or expressed an interest to help effectively, and it's time. It's time. It's time. The saints demand it. It's just the way that it goes. So I think maybe St. Mary's will be the one that is the touchstone church between the two organizations, I would imagine, because I think world Catholicism, once we start saying, maybe look at Mary a little bit differently periodically, and some of the people who are more Protestant, like some of the people at Summit, also believe in Mary, and that's a bit unusual, and that draws light, that the love coming from an unusual place and reverence coming from a non-traditional source. Usually it's Catholics that are into Mary, and some of the other Protestants aren't. But at CUT-TSL, it's a little bit different. So it's revitalized, requalified interest, energy, exposure, light, all of those things. And I think that it would be a great headquarters for, who knows, extra work for us through the Blue Army, Our Lady's Blue Army, World Apostolate of Fatima, the Servants of Jesus and Mary. Those are the two, World Apostolate and Servants of Jesus and Mary, that I would start with personally. And I'm trying to think of, well, I mean, you could go, there's so many different, I was going to say covens, groups of nuns and so forth who are Mary devoted. I have all sorts of links for that. Okay. And I hope that's interesting to people as well. And I'll try to keep it interesting. And it's a little bit, I know it sounds a little bit clunky right now, and I don't want anyone to feel overwhelmed. But I think that if we just all I do picture this whole main issue sort of coming to a resolution around the acquisition and the implementation of these newly oriented churches. I do see that. Okay. And I wanted to, mind-born sons. So, also, to continue, so when I acquire these places, there are going to be convocations, which I hope will be momentous, high-flung, appropriately, but memorable religious ceremonies involving, the appropriate decree service or authorized and so forth, and um, presentations from me and so on. And I think that, it will start with renewing core concepts, but going even deeper, such as studying Sirius, really studying the great central sun and making the entrance of the church into the state of Maine and into these repurposed churches, recommissioned churches, um, memorable and meaningful as well. And I've started to study that. Your donation would assist me to go through and study more about the solar logoi, um, you know, the, the relationship to the great central sun, to the galactic center. All of those details, we have to take a look, at, and you'll find just that all that rich history and those meaningful references unfolding as we go through it together. And it really does come through with like the summit imprimatur, which is amazing to see. And it is a very exciting time for me personally, and I think that people who are even remotely inspired by my work here and who get excited when I get excited, or who might be able to relate to some of that joy, or who experience it very profoundly, will be amazed. And it's my intention that people want to return to church and study more about the Magi, for instance. I think we will do that at St. Augustine on Christmas, the first Christmas that we have together. Have like an in-depth discussion of the nativity and what people at CUT in this New Thought lineage believe about the identity of those three kings. It's an interesting conversation to have. So, mind-born sons, that might be something to look at additionally.